I'd like to introduce Stefano Quintarelli. I'll share with all of you his background before his speech. Stefano Quintarelli is an Italian information technology specialist and former Italian parliamentarian as part of the Civics and Innovators Group. He's ranked as one of the 30 most innovative Italian entrepreneurs, and he's an innovator working on the European digital identity, and he's considered one of the most influential people in the development of the digital government. Stefano, I'll give you the floor.
Thank you. Well, this place is gorgeous. I mean, I'm honored to be here. Thank you very much for having me here and for inviting me. So I have been asked to give a talk on the impacts of AI and digital transformation. I have been part of I have been one of the members of the high-level expert group on artificial intelligence for the European Commission, and we worked from 2018 to 2020 to propose a set of ethical guidelines and policy proposals that somehow have come to form the basis of the work that led to the European Artificial Intelligence Act that it's hopefully coming out in his definitive version soon. I will start my talk explaining to you what artificial intelligence really is, because we read many, and we hear in TV, etc., many things, and I just want to be a little more technical, so to provide you the basis to understand on your own what it is, what really it is, and the consequences it has. So let's start with AI. When we think about computers, we tend to think about a device that we feed into a program and some data, and then the computer computes an output. And the computer does that with a procedure, with an algorithm. And this algorithm is deterministic. It follows a set of steps, and in this case, 3 times 4 is always 12. Machine learning, we have had several waves of artificial intelligence technologies in the past. The present one, the one that it's most, I would say, hyped, and the one that is more promising, is based on data, and and the name of this technology is machine learning. So machine learning is pretty different from traditional algorithmic programming. The definition of one of the definitions of machine learning is this: providing a computer with the ability to learn and apply statistical models that are not explicitly programmed. And Wikipedia lists 82 algorithms to do the thing. I put learn in quotes, and the reason why I put it in quotes will be apparent to you in a few minutes. Okay, so providing a computer with the ability to learn and apply statistical models that are not explicitly programmed. If you are puzzled, it's perfectly okay. Just to try to picture it down. So we have a computer, we fix some parameters, we feed in some data, and the computer distills a model, a statistical model, that we can then later use with a different computer and new data to make predictions. Again, if you did not understand, that's perfectly fine. That's perfectly fine. Okay, take this picture. This is the skyline of Milan. If I ask to you how the weather was the day after this picture, what would you say? Was it sunny or rainy? Sunny, right? Why? We have the proverb. In Italian, it's rosso di sera, bel tempo si spera. In English, it is red sky at night, shepherd's delight. If you are from the East Coast, it's probably sailor's delight. And we really don't need to understand why, if it's red, if the sky is red in the evening, then the day after is going to be sunny. But that works. You see, we have fixed some parameters, and the parameter, so the laser pointer does not show. Okay, the parameters is look to the sky, look westward in the evening, and then look to the weather the following day. And we feed in data. We learn by a lot of observations that there is a correlation between the red sky and the sunny day the day afterwards, the following day. We learn from the data that there is this correlation, and we distill the model, a statistical model, red sky at night, shepherd delight, rosso di sera, bel tempo si spera, which is a statistical model that is the proverb. The proverb is a statistical model that, based on the data from observation of reality, can help us making new predictions. So tonight it's not red. How is going to be the weather tomorrow? Well, it's likely going to be raining, so I'd better not go fishing. Okay, I want to stress out that in the first case, I said the computer computes an output. In this case, I say that computer makes a prediction. The reason for this is that in the second case, 3 times 4 is not always 12. It's a statistical model, and sometimes there are some mistakes in the prediction, statistical errors. Okay, so this is actually what we have done is machine learning. It was made by humans, distilling a proverb, a statistical model from the data. It works perfectly with the sunset, but we can imagine of how it can work also, let's say, with an apartment. We can feed the computer a number of data with the characteristics of the apartment, the square meters, the floor, the city the apartment is in, and correlate that to the price. And after we feed 5,000 or 10,000 examples of pricing of apartments based on their features, the computer distills a statistical model, let's call it the apartment proverb, distills a statistical model that can then be used with new data to determine the price of apartment. Hey, listen, I have a 3-bedroom apartment, downtown Milan, what it's priced, 10 million. It's just the same, like having the red sky at night, the proverb red sky at night, shepherd's delight. And it's also the same, let's say, for example, for histological exams. You feed the computer 5,000, 10,000, 20,000 examples of images of histological samples correlated to the fact that if they are cancer or non-cancer. And after you feed that to the computer distills a model, which is a statistical model, that correlates some patterns that are inside the image with the fact that that image represents our cancer or a healthy tissue. It's just the same. Red sky at night, shepherd's delight, and diagnosing cancer are exactly the same for a machine learning from a machine learning perspective. And also for autonomous driving, whenever it will come. Autonomous driving is just the correlation between gazillions of data of kilometers of driving, correlating the scenario to the speed and to the tilting degree of the steering wheel. And that's it. It's just like red sky at night, shepherd's delight, rosso di sera, bel tempo si spera, and autonomous driving works exactly that same way. You have to provide the system a vast number of cases, a huge number of cases, all possible variation of cases. So the computer builds the statistical model that encompasses all this, as we computer geeks call it, knowledge. Well, I don't know if it's actual knowledge. Anyway, the way how we build this statistical model is by mimicking the brain, mimicking neurons, or at least mimicking the functioning of the neurons that we thought was in the 60s. In the 60s, we had of last century, we had a very simplified view of how neurons worked, and we thought, well, we can replicate that. You know, neurons work that upstream neurons send electrical signal to downstream neurons. All the neurons are interconnected, and when the downstream neurons receives enough electricity, then eventually it passes its activation thresholds, and this neuron fires and sends an electrical signal along the axon through the synapses to the downstream neurons. Okay? On average, each of our neurons is connected to about 1,000 neurons in our brain, and it forms a complicated network. So the idea here is that you send an electric signal to the neuron, and then if that surpasses a threshold of activation, fires an electrical signal along the axon and through the synapses to the dendrites of the downstream neuron. Okay, and so some very smart guy said, well, we can do that, we can simulate, we can mimic that with mathematics, with graphs. Very easy. You see, we have 4 upstream neurons and 1 downstream neurons in this graph, in this example. And the state of the downstream neuron, I'm gonna move. The state of this neuron depends on the level of activation of the upstream neurons and the fact that if the synapses conduce electricity or blocks, or they block the flow of electricity. And the way how we compute that is very easy. This is an example. You see, we have 3 levels of activation, 1, 0, and 1, and we have a value for the synapses, just telling us how conductible they are, how much electricity they conduce, and then we can compute the state of the downstream neuron. Very easy. Oh, there is a minus in front that is wrong. I apologize. The bottom line is wrong. So it's 0.3 plus times 1 plus 0.5 times 0 plus 0. No, it's correct. Sorry, it's wrong in the picture. Times plus 0.5 times 1 equals minus 0.3 plus 0.5 equals 0.2. This is how networks are computed. Very simple. It's a lot of sums and multiplications, a huge amount of sums and multiplication. Then there are some hyperbolic tangents and exponentials, but way less. So the most of it is sums and multiplication. Very easy. So we take the level of activation, we multiply it with the weight of the synapses, and we obtain the state of the downstream neuron. I apologize for being too technical, but this is important. So take, for example, this network, a slightly more complicated network. And suppose we feed to the network the pixels of the image of a breast sample, a breast histological sample. Then we start computing. We compute this neuron in the way I just told you, a weighted sum of the activation times the synapses. Then we compute this neuron, then we compute this neuron, then we compute this neuron, etc. Eventually we finish with the first layer, and we move on to the second layer. And we compute this neuron and this neuron, and when we finish, we compute the last 2 neurons. And we obtain some values, let's say 0.6 and 0.4. This computation is called forward propagation. You see, computation flows forward. If that sample was not a cancer, I would expect here to have a value 1, because it's not cancer, so I would expect it to have value 1 from the network. And the network here behaves poorly, so I need to train it, to teach it. And how do I teach it? Well, it gave me 0.6, and I expected 1, so that there is a delta difference of 0.4. I can take this 0.4 and then just spread this 0.4 on the various synapses backwards. And this is called backpropagation. So the next time this network receives as an input that same image, it will rightly correct the output to 1 instead of 0.6. Okay? Fine. We do this on 10,000, 50,000 of samples, and after we have done this, we have a network that is trained to recognize cancer from a tissue of an histological sample. We do forward propagation, back propagation, forward propagation. Have you seen Karate Kid? It's just the same, no? Forward propagation, back propagation, forward propagation with all the samples. This is how, in the end, we are taking a network that does not behave as expected, and with this forward propagation and back propagation, we adapt the synapses so that the network behaves like we want it to behave. This is what we call learning. And you see that it's very different from how a human learns. If we see one cat once, we can recognize cats always. To a computer, you must feed all possible examples of all possible cats so that it recognizes a cat. If you provide to the computer an image of a cat without a tail, it will not recognize the cat unless it has been trained with images of cats without the tail. There is a nice comic from XKCD that's a popular strip on the internet. This is your machine learning system? Yes. Pour the data into this big pile of linear algebra and then collect the answers on the other side. And what if the answers are wrong? Just stir the pile until they start looking right. This is extremely accurate. This is how machine learning works. This is exactly how machine learning works. Would you expect such a system to take over humanity? Well, okay, AI is a new way of making software that allows us to address non-algorithmic problems. Remember, algorithmic part, the traditional part, like perception, classification, prediction, generation, all things that are related to statistical models. And this is very powerful because we can use that to recognize cancer, to identify cancer, to say this loan is we can expect this person to repay the loan or not, and to make a prediction, or to generate some content in CRM chats. But this is how it works. Okay, why do we have now this data-based artificial intelligence, machine learning? Because the computing power, the power of computers and the availability of data has increased over the years. I must add one thing, sorry. In the move from algorithms, calculation to perception, classification, prediction, what really changes dramatic is speed and scale. You know, my calculator is extremely faster than me in making square roots, and it is more precise. Once we digitize an activity, this activity can increase in scale dramatically and increase in speed dramatically, just like my calculator does square roots. Okay, so all perception, classifications, etc., will far exceed human capabilities, like my calculator far exceeds human capabilities in making square roots. Okay, the reason why we have this type of artificial intelligence now is because of the confluence of a number of factors. What is a computer? A computer is basically a machine that has three components. One, input-output, so the way how it acquires data from the world, the storage, the vast number of data that we can accumulate, and computing power, the transistor price. What these graphs tells us, these are logarithmic scales. Whenever you see a logarithmic scale, it means that effectively the trend is this one. Okay, so we have the average transistor price falling dramatically tells us that the marginal cost of computation is zero, is almost zero, is zero. The increase of capacity per dollar tells us that storing information, the marginal cost of storing information is zero. The fact that the capacity of transmission increases so much tells us that the marginal cost of transmitting information is zero. So basically, anything that can be computed will be computed, any data that can be collected will be collected, and will be collected and transmitted via the network. Okay? And everything that can be produced, every data that can be produced will be transmitted, collected, and computed, because the marginal cost is zero. These three components are the basis of the popular buzzwords of the time. So the fact that you can collect all the data is that you can obtain and collect all the data is what we call the Internet of Things. The fact that you accumulate data, it's what we call big data, and the fact that you can compute extremely with zero marginal cost, it's what enables what we call AI now. Okay. We humans are not very good in understanding exponential phenomenon. Have you seen this game before? No? Okay. Just to try to explain people, non-tech people and people that they don't work very often with exponential trends, what exponential means. Imagine you have a glass where you put 2 bacteria at minute 1. And these 2 bacteria replicate, and at minute 60, the glass is full of bacteria. My question to you is, at minute 55, so 5 minutes before the hour, just 5 minutes before the hour, how filled will be the glass? Sorry? 5%? Somebody? 20? 50? 1? Well, it will be 3.1% actually, and it's easier if you go backwards. At minute 60 is 100%, then at minute 59 is 50%, 25, 12.5, 6.25, 3.125%. So basically, 5 minutes before the hour, if you look at the glass, you can't see anything inside. That's the power of exponential trends. And you see, this has very important consequences. Suppose you have somebody in your organization proposing a project, the green project. After 4 quarters of not producing anything noticeable, you probably will kill that project. While if you have waited just 1.5 years more, you would discover that it's extremely worthy. It's very difficult to have exponential-based innovation inside an organization. It's extremely difficult because by the time you know, you need to trust in it, in its foundation, in its fundament, for a lot of time, because when you notice it, it means that it's skyrocketing. On the other hand, if you look outside of the window for signals of competitors, I don't know, of new competing possibility, etc., and you don't notice anything, it doesn't mean that nothing is happening. Simply when you notice, it's too late. Games are done. This is extremely difficult also for policymakers. No? Imagine that's why we have these superpowers, the American GAFAs. Because once you notice, they have taken over the world. Take this cover of Forbes. This was released when the iPhone was announced, when the iPhone was released, and Forbes had this cover saying, Nokia, 1 billion customers, can anyone catch the cell phone king? They were looking outside, nobody could notice what was happening, and what was happening was the pinch and zoom with the capacity screens that changed telephony and computing forever, and Nokia no longer exists. I mean, the brand exists and does other things, but Nokia does no longer exist. And this is because of exponential trends. Sorry. Okay, this is because of exponential trends, because once you notice, it's too late. The fact is that we have 20,000, 30,000 years of experience living in a physical world, and we don't have as many years of experience living in a digital world. In a digital dimension, I would argue, because digital is not alternative to physical. They are supplemental, like length is not alternative to depth. They both coexist. So the basic properties of physical goods are very different. Producing the first sample of something, the first trial of something, the model, costs a lot of money. Reproducing it has high variable costs. Then you need to store it, and you need to transfer it, and all this activity costs money and require time and require manipulation, mostly done by humans. And humans work in working times, in working hours. With digital things, the basic properties are completely different. Producing the first sample of the digital something costs way less than making the same thing physically. And then, because of the three things I told you, the three trends in memory, network, and storage, reproducing has a zero marginal cost, so it doesn't cost. Archiving doesn't cost, transferring doesn't cost. Manipulation is done by computers, and computers work 24 hours a day. So it's completely different. I am an avid player of Scrabble. You know Scrabble, right? And I used to have different versions of the materials Scrabble, the physical Scrabble made by Mattel. And I have a very beautiful one that is for travel, a travel Scrabble where you have the tiles that fit into the hole so that when you travel they don't fall apart. When Mattel did that thing, it took them a lot of study, and it cost a trial and error to build that. Okay, then when they reproduce it, well, it costs a lot of money, because, I mean, you have the plastic, you have the environmental precautions that you need to take, you have people working on them, etc. And once you produce them, then you need to store them in warehouses, then you need the logistics to deliver those. You have the salespeople going to the toy stores and asking how many of these Scrabbles will you want for Christmas season, and collect that information and send it back to, well, I mean, you get the point. Now I play Scrabble on my phone with somebody that's not in Italy. I mean, Scrabble, the material, the physical Scrabble, you need to play locally, while the digital Scrabble you play anywhere. And the one I play is made by a Spanish company. Actually, it's a company founded by two guys, one from Madrid and the other one from Buenos Aires, and there are about 30 people. I don't remember the revenues, but it's about 1 million per person or something like that. They publish different games, and making the first digital Scrabble costed very little, and then reproducing it, or storing, archiving it, transferring has zero marginal costs. And requires no time, and I can play everywhere. And the provision of the selling and the producing, the reproduction of the digital Scrabble is done by computer 24 hours a day. So you see that, well, Mattel has some difficulties, of course, but the same goes with newspapers. Just think, traditionally newspapers are on the left-hand side. Online media are on the right-hand side. With airlines, I am old enough to remember the IATA price books. Perhaps you remember them, the International Air Travel Association books of the tariffs with all possible legs, etc. They need to forecast the demand with 1 year in advance and make the price 1 year in advance. And they needed to distribute these books, and tickets were physical. They were printed at the headquarters of the air company, and then delivered to the travel agency via a network of intermediaries. And then you have, on the other hand, you have low-cost airlines, where this physical part simply does not exist. And you see that it's very hard to compete if you have a business based in the physical part against somebody that has not all these frictions. Few last words about rivality and excludability. Rivality means that either I have a good or he has it. That's a rival good. Excludable means that a policeman comes and takes away that good from us, and we don't have it. That's the basis. These two things are the basis of private property. And they are the basis of our society, the fact that goods are rival and excludable. So we can have law enforcement, and we can say you are inhibited to access the things. When you are in the digital realm, goods are not rival. And you can try to mimic rivalry. It costs a lot. And they are not it's very difficult to make them excludable. So even that, you need to work a lot in order to mimic excludability. But this explains why digital goods are not goods. They are services. And they are regulated by a service contract between you, the quote-unquote buyer, you don't buy, you subscribe, and the provider. When I buy a physical Scrabble, I have it. I can tweak it. I can take my hammer and break it. When I buy, quote-unquote, a digital Scrabble, I don't own anything. I have a license contract with somebody, and this license contract, being a service, at the back, it has some licensing contract for intellectual property right that transfers revenues to Holland, then to Bermuda, and then I don't know where else. You see, all these phenomena are related, and they are caused by the different properties that the physical dimension and the digital dimension have. This creates some macro consequences. The first one is that traditional organizations that were based on a network, somehow on a network of, let's say, the Mattel with the distributors and the shop, the political party with the local offices and the circle, whatever you want, the air company, the air travel company with their offices in the city and the travel agency. All activities, all physical enabled activities that were based on a network that had as part of their value the physical proximity with the customer are being replaced by a center-only business. Of course, this has a lot of impact in your business. Then, the fact that material, the physical dimension requires time, somehow creates frictions, while on the digital dimension, everything is extremely faster. Extremely faster meaning that it's more difficult to adapt for the organization and for consumers. And then you have people that are adapting, the front runners, and then you have people that is left behind. Then, the fact that transmitting information from one part of the world to the other does not cost and does not require time, I mean, it's in real time and with a zero marginal cost, it means that the world becomes a point. I mean, everything accessible, always, everywhere. This means that your customers are going to operate globally, and they are going to have the global competition. Regulated business somehow are protected because regulation is local, but not regulated businesses are faced to international opportunities and to global opportunities and global competition. Then AI, as I said, allows to do perception, classification, prediction on a scale and with a speed that far exceeds human capacity. The previous world, where we had high marketing costs with segmentation that depended on clusters of users, etc., is replaced with the possibility of having targets of one person. Because the computing power, you collect all the data and you use all the data to precisely identify and propose the customer what he needs and what he wants, even before he knows he wants it. Well, we have seen the effects of this thing with political interference, of course. It's based on artificial intelligence. That type of artificial intelligence was already present. Do you use TikTok? Come on, don't be shy. Do you use TikTok? Okay, I don't. Do you use Twitter? I don't. Well, okay, you get it. Why? Because you have algorithms, you have systems, you have AI systems that decide what you will need to know and collect information about you and target precisely the message. That's the power of AI. Okay, I used to use Twitter because Twitter was the only social network that allowed me to have the feed of information based on the people I chose to follow and just in reverse chronological order. So the most recent information first, with no sorting by an algorithm. But after Mr. Musk bought it, I just quit and I moved to Mastodon. Okay, but targeting of one. And then there is this fact of extreme dissemination of computers everywhere. Computers tended to be concentrated in places, and now they are everywhere. Not talking only about mobile phones, I mean sensors. I have a friend who's a professor at Berkeley, and he tells me they have a lab on what they call painted electronics. Painted electronics means nano-level machines that are embedded in painting, in coating, and you can put on a wall and use that to gather data, pressure, temperature. Eventually, the pressure can lead to detecting the presence of people and to have type quote-unquote microphones, etc. So this is the type of pervasiveness that electronics will have. The electronics are and will increasingly become the fabric of our world. And all the data they produce will be collected and it will be analyzed by AI. Just to sum up this part, I mean, digital obeys different rules than physical. And some of the macro consequence is that digital intermediaries are a new type of intermediaries that don't rely on physical intermediaries. Trends, the acceleration of trends targets one, concentration of the world, and pervasiveness. This will impact your business, either directly or your customers. And it already does, and it will do way more in the future. Fact is that we have lived in a physical dimension that has been evolving slowly over centuries. Okay, now, in the past 15 years, started 15 years ago, I can argue why it's 15 years, but starting 15 years ago, the physical dimension has been enriched, I would say wrapped, with a digital dimension that has become the main user interface to interact with the physical dimension. You buy an airplane ticket online, you book a restaurant, I mean, everything you do online. And even if you don't think you are doing it online, the person with you interact is doing online. So the digital dimension has wrapped the world. The digital dimension is, and increasingly will be everywhere, the main user interface to the physical dimension for interpersonal, social, and economic relationships. Now, when we think about computers, we tend to think about computers as enablers. But increasingly, they are not being enablers. They are becoming intermediaries. Do you book a hotel with Booking? Booking uses a lot of AI to just analyze, classify, etc. And they propose to you the hotel that they think that is most valuable to you when you look at suggested hotels, and they grab a chunk of 20 to 30% of the price of the room. Airbnb, the same. Amazon. Do you have an idea what percentage, on average, of the price that is of the goods sold on the Amazon platforms what percentage is retained by Amazon? But say a number. How much? 8. You know, credit cards take about 1%, okay? 8. What else? Somebody else? 20? Well, it's more than 50. It's more than 50. And still, the Amazon part of the goods sales, etc., loses money. And is subsidized by the cloud services. So this is something that we learn in an antitrust document. For a long time, internet players did not know how to monetize people. Then they learned how to monetize by becoming the new type of intermediaries, cutting out all the layers of previous intermediary and just becoming the single intermediary. And the way how they do that is by leveraging network effects. Do you use WhatsApp? Yes. And why do you use WhatsApp? Because everybody's on WhatsApp. That's the power of the network effect. Do you want to sell something used? You go to eBay. Do you want to buy something used? You go to eBay. Because everybody's there, sellers and buyers. This is the power of the network effect. And the other is the lock-in effect. This is a fishing cage. Very easy to enter, very difficult to get out. Why does Google provide you, I don't know, unlimited amount of email with Gmail? Because once you are there, you are giving them for free all your data, and you cannot move, because moving the mail archive that you have is a mess. So this is how the big corps exploit this power. So they use precise targeting, very sophisticated AI-based systems, and they become intermediaries exploiting network effects, lock-ins, and zero marginal costs. That's the power of zero marginal costs. It's a different economy. With AI, those who control the gateway to the digital dimension are controlling the main user interface of people to the physical dimension. I will come again on this in a minute when I'm going to talk about digital identity. And these gatekeepers, the mechanism that these gatekeepers enable, as I briefly told, the different properties of physical and digital and their strategies are those that lead to base erosion and profit shifting, so the fact that they don't pay taxes in the local place, fake news, AI-based political influence, reduction of consumer protection, people left behind, reverse auctions. Reverse auctions means I have this job up for sale, who wants less? And I say, okay, I want $2 to do this. No, I'm okay with $1, 50 cents, okay, then you do the job. Compression of salaries, the Uberization of work, reduced labor rights, etc. It's all related to this. You see, we have grown with the notion that there is coming from the 18th and 19th century. There is a traditional conflict that was brought about by the Industrial Revolution, and it's a conflict between capital versus labor. Now, information has come in the game, and we have information. It's an emerging conflict that is brought by the AI and digital revolution, and this conflict is between the intermediaries, the new intermediaries, and those that are intermediated by those intermediaries. And we used to have capitalists and proletarians. Now we have some very few information plutocrats. And we have the contraposition between West and East, and this is instead a global issue. I am finishing. This is my last slide. So this has, I want to sum up somehow with all these systemic effects of what I have told you. Artificial intelligence is the lubricant of all operational processes. The ability of gathering the data, analyzing, making perception, making prediction. In whatever activity we do, we need to collect the data, and we are going to use that data to smoothen this process. Because digital is the new normal. So we need to have all this data. Even if we don't know why we need to collect it now, it will become evident in a couple of years. Even if we don't have the tools, the motives now, it will become evident in a couple of years. With artificial intelligence and mass customization, we have new oligopolistic intermediaries that act as gatekeepers. In the digital dimension, locality is a friction, but this friction can also be an opportunity. It depends on the business model, of course. We need to find a different balance between operating locally and globally. And you are a network, and I will come back to this one second. You should ask yourself, what is our local value, the value that we can provide locally, because that's an asset. Then we have an acceleration of events. The acceleration of events simply leads to social fracture with new digital pores. By digital pores, I mean the people that are not up to pace with the digital world, with the digital dimension. That leads to incomprehension and distance between culture. And think for policymakers, as I said, once you discover that the thing has emerged, I mean, things have gone. I mean, it's very difficult to make policies. And the last bit is the increased relevance of digital identity, identifying the user, the customer. And digital identity is the ultimate competitive asset for all of us. We know that there is the payment network with the issuers, the acquirers, and the processors and all the things. Now, expect in the upcoming years, in the next few years, that a new network will appear, a network based on identity. Identity with issuers of identity and acquirers of identity, very similar to the payment one. So that when you go, for example, to ask to buy a new SIM on a telephone operator, you just show their QR code and you receive the contract on your mobile, you hit OK, you smile, and the contract is signed. This type of thing is going to grow very, very fast. In all type of contractual relationship where you need to have the identity. Controlling the identity of the users is extremely important. Over the time, these two networks, the payment network and the identity network, will coincide. I don't know how to say this in English, will overlap and will be the same. So this is a very big trend that is coming as an effect of all that I've said before. So you are a network. A network has a power. You have some values that are very important, and you need to leverage that, in my view, for your customers. Being a network allows you to be faster, quicker, and more agile than other traditional bank companies. Being a network allows you to experiment, to take decisions way faster, you need to leverage technology. I mean, you cannot say, okay, that's not important, it doesn't matter to me. You need to exploit technology, you need to be first adopter in everything. And of course, you cannot do that alone, because every single entity does not have the resources on their own. You need to team together, but you are a network. You have a power, the power of the network, and you have values. Okay, and these values can be the basis how you approach the customers and you address those things that I said. I mean, the exclusion of people left behind, the fact that from afar you cannot build a trust relationship. Well, you have these assets. Thank you.